Welcome to Vegan Business Talk with Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. Hello and welcome to episode 129 of Vegan Business Talk. I'm Katrina Fox, journalist, author and PR consultant and founder of Vegan Business Media, a content events and training platform providing success strategies for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs. Now, just quickly, before we jump into the main part of the show, I wanted to let you know about my online PR course and group coaching program, Vegans in the Limelight. Now, this is a 12-month online program where you have video training that teaches you everything you need to know about how to do your own PR. You can ask questions on the platform, and you can also post your proposed pitches and media releases before sending them to journalists to get my feedback. You also get to jump on a monthly live group call where you can ask whatever questions you want about your business, and you can get tailored help from me on anything to do with raising the profile of your brand. So it might be that I look at your website and give you some feedback, or how to improve your LinkedIn profile and other marketing and PR topics. So if you'd like to find out more about that, just hop on over to veganbusinessmedia.com and you'll see a link there for Vegans in the Limelight. And now on to the main part of the show. In this episode, I interview Claire Smith, co-founder of humane investment platform Beyond Investing in Switzerland. Claire is a vegan and environmentalist with 34 years' experience in finance and investment at top-tier banks and investment houses, including UBS and Alban Partners. She's carried out bespoke hedge fund research, as well as worked as a derivatives broker, marketer and structurer, and credit analyst. Beyond Investing creates investment programs designed for animal advocates and climate-conscious investors in both public-listed equity markets and venture capital. The company created the US Vegan Climate Index, a stock index which screens out all animal exploitation and fossil fuel use from a US market benchmark, and is the sponsor of the US Vegan Climate Exchange Traded Fund, which launched on the New York Stock Exchange recently. Claire is also an investor in vegan and plant-based businesses and the co-founder of the Beyond Animal integrated digital platform, which aims to accelerate the growth of the global vegan economy. In this episode, Claire talks about how and why she and her team at Beyond Investing created the US Vegan Climate Index and ETF, how well ethical investments do overall compared to non-ethical ones in terms of people getting a good return on their investment, the 3 criteria she looks for when considering whether to invest in a vegan brand, how the Beyond Animal platform will help to drive the vegan economy, how the finance industry perceives veganism and how this has changed over the years, and much more. Here's the interview with Claire Smith from Beyond Investing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, it's very good to be with you, Katrina.
Very interested in talking to you because you've got such an interesting background coming from the finance industry. But one of the first things I ask everyone is, what's their why? So, and I suppose this will tie into your journey through your finance career, but what's your why behind what you're doing? You're doing some amazing things with Beyond Investing, Beyond Impact, Beyond Animal, which we'll dig into. But tell us a little bit, first of all, about why you do what you do.
Okay, well, why I'm doing what I'm doing now is because what I'm trying to do is to tie my investment, my business experience into something that's been a deep conviction of mine for many years, for all my adult life, which is around the treatment of animals. Being vegetarian since I was 15 for 20 years, and then turning vegan and being mainly vegan for the last 20 years again, let's say, so 40 years.
Wow.
It's
That's
something
awesome. We just pause there and do a wow, because that's amazing.
But it is something that's just been a constant in my life, and something that obviously, through many of that, through quite a long period of time, it's really only recently that the numbers of people, vegetarian or vegan, that have been increasing, and particularly veganism, which felt very strange, several years ago. So that's something that has basically accompanied me through all that time. Environmentalism as well, and I just feel very lucky now to be able to work in that space, and to put the skills that I have in the investment side, and the analysis side of businesses, into improving the lot of animals by investing in those types of businesses which are creating different products, and also by creating investment products that allow people like me to invest with that without feeling bad about their investments.
Yeah, fantastic. That's what I love. I'm loving seeing more people like you who come from a very robust business and finance background, who are also ethical vegans, and, being able to transfer your skills. So in terms of being in the finance industry, because, obviously, the finance industry has its dark side as well, with, companies and investing in, certain stocks and shares, which is why you've created some of the products, which we'll talk to in a bit. I'm curious now then, how are you seen now in the finance industry, because you've come from this very robust, industry professional, obviously very well respected in what you do, and now you're this out and proud vegan, ethical investor and finance expert. I'm curious, how are you seen now within the finance sector? I guess I'm just curious, as do they still see people like you as a bit weird or a bit radical, or is there starting to be a bit of a shift?
Well, I mean, I think, and this is something an area that I've been interested in for quite some time, even, when I was working in banks, and then left and went into the funds industry. Even in the year 2001, I put a proposal to a London-based fund manager for a fund which I actually called the Saints and Sinners Fund.
That's a catchy name.
And it was basically a long short equity fund, which, I mean, and this is within the hedge fund world, you buy shares, but you can also sell shares short. And it was based, and I was a reader of the Ecologist magazine at the time, and it was based around the whole kind of concept of buying stocks on ethical considerations and shorting other stocks on sort of, again, on ethical considerations, obviously the kind of the best and the worst, let's say, and playing that as a theme. So it was something that I had an interest in for some time, and it was really just a question of how I could build that into my my day-to-day work. It proved to be impossible within the company that I was working with up to fairly recently to bring that into my job to the extent that I really wanted to. I really wanted to work full time on that. And because of my thoughts, and as I said, this sort of slightly entrepreneurial idea in 2001, which was clearly, maybe 20 years ahead of its time, it was something that I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do. How am I perceived? I think when I talk about things like the beyond impact, and especially that word of impact, I think that has a perception in some people's minds of accepting sort of sub-market returns or trade-offs between the impact that you're having and the returns that you're getting from the investments. And I just want to be very, very clear on this. I haven't just thrown away all of 30 odd years of training in the financial markets to start making sort of philanthropic type with no expectation of return. What is really interesting about what's happening at this point in time is that the societal shifts are creating creating the demand for the products, which is then obviously supporting the returns. For the impact investments that I'm making, which are all about sort of animal replacement and vegan, new vegan brands, new vegan products, making veganism much more accessible to people in terms of their consumption, but also in terms of the beyond investing, which is based more, and certainly in terms of the large cap, around exclusions. I firmly believe that this is the right way to invest for the planet, for returns as well. And so, to the extent that anybody in the finance area looks at me a little askance, I feel as if they're missing something, or they're not realizing the impacts that the changes in the planet and the changes in people's beliefs and the way that they want to consume, etc., are actually going to affect the companies in their portfolios. That they need to wake up to that they're actually, ignoring a quite major risk.
For sure. How well, just on that, seeing as you brought that up, how well do ethical investments do overall compared with non-ethical ones? Because I think that's an interesting one. It's like you just said, you're not just doing this solely out of philanthropy. You've got to have a return on investment. And as well, people who invest, they might be the most ethical vegans in the world, but they still want a return on their investment as well as doing good. So talk to us a little bit about how ethical investments are doing in terms of ROI.
Well, there are some. I haven't got the research numbers in front of me, but the research has that this was something that people were concerned about. I would say maybe even 10 years ago, and the research hadn't been done. That there was this perception of, if you take certain stocks out of your portfolio, or you're not purely looking at the financials, then you will be underperforming. The evidence is in on that the sustainable funds do perform at least as well as the, let's say, not say unsustainable funds, but the ones that don't bring those sorts of tenets into their investments. And I think I go back to some of the things I was saying before about the risks, because what makes a company sustainable or unsustainable is a lot to do with things like the externalities. And we see examples, say, in the tobacco industry, we see it in the meat industry, where companies now are having to take on board those externalities, either through regulation or by being sued, frankly. As we saw with some pork producers in the US. So those types of risks need to be priced into those stocks. To the extent that they're not priced in, then they will become priced in by the stocks falling. To the extent that governance as well is very important. A lot of people say, oh, well, do there need to be independent directors? Does there need to be diversity on the board? What the research has found is the extent that there is poor governance, it does create some very suboptimal decisions by management, and the shares suffer as a result. VW, for example, was a very obvious example of that, of poor governance at the top of the company, and obviously that suffered. And there was so there are multiple individual instances, and that sort of aggregates together to make it very worthwhile to be at least looking at these environmental, social, and governance types of indicators. Even if you don't take them on board in the stock selection, I think you should be at least running it through some kind of model to see that you're not unwittingly betting on stocks that have poor metrics around that, because this kind of thing is really coming out into the public domain, and it can undermine your performance.
For sure. So it's good to know, because I think there is that perception. I think, like, you're right, when they get excited about the new index and the new ETF, which we're about to talk about, coming out, and one of the things is people go, oh yeah, I absolutely want to invest because in accordance with my ethics, but am I going to lose money because for my retirement, etc. So it's good to know, so that the research is saying that these kind of funds perform at least as well as, so it's not a huge worry. So that's good to know. So tell us a little bit about the US Vegan Climate Index. So you started that last year in June. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, the US Vegan Climate Index is one of what will be a suite of indices across different geographies and global, and within the listed equities side, whereas obviously our approach could be applied to any type of asset. It's essentially that's a corporate asset that's about what a company is doing. Potentially even sovereigns. We could also be looking at, say, the breakdown of industries within a country and apply in some ways the same model. But the essence of it really is to say, if you're a vegan, if you're an environmentalist, if you're concerned about human rights as well, you have a philosophy of sort of zero harm and living in harmony with nature. What are the kind of business activities that you would really prefer not to profit from, because you wouldn't do them yourself? And I think there's an issue really of kind of personal responsibility here, in terms of, if you would not kill an animal yourself, if you don't eat an animal yourself, if you feel conscious when you go out into the countryside that you're not dropping litter everywhere, why do you tolerate companies doing that? Why would you want to profit from companies, spilling chemicals everywhere, let's say? So that's really the sort of ethos of the product. What it does then is it takes that list of what are called prohibited activities within the prospectus, and we screen each company to see the extent of their involvement in that. And we're really driving towards zero involvement. We realize that we live in a society where it is commonplace, let's say, for people to eat meat. I wish it was different, but it's still the case. So we're not making exclusions, let's say, of, the company cafeteria is serving meat, because within our society it would be fairly difficult to find any company of any size that was purely a purely vegan company, and had enshrined cruelty-free throughout every possible aspect of their business processes. But the business model and the reliance of the business model on harming animals or the environment in some way is really the core philosophy, and that's what's informing our exclusion. So to the extent we find this in a company's business activities, then we are simply excluding them. That leads us to exclude about 43% of the US market. Across all of our different exclusions, which is quite a large amount. And some people might look at the index and say, but it's very tilted towards technology, or it's somewhat tilted towards financials, although we are considering, for example, the financing of the prohibited activities. So some banks with high fossil fuel exposures do come out. But that's just a function of the fact that we're taking so much out from the consumer industry. I actually say the consumer sector is riddled with animal exploitation, and that's not good. And so it's really up to these companies to change and to consider what they're doing, and not just sort of take it as a default that they have meat on their shelves, or that they have wool in their product range, or and it's really up to the companies to determine that. Let's say the pharmaceutical, or some of these other industries that are testing on animals. Why do they not try and change the regulation in order that they don't have to test on animals? Most animal testing is fairly pointless. It can be often a question of proving that something that we already know is a dangerous thing is going to kill a certain number of animals. Oh yes, so now we know. We're just confirming something that we know. Yeah, it's not serving any purpose. So we'd like companies. We don't deliberately want to. We're not trying to punish companies in that way. But we are trying to say to them, look, we're not going to be able to invest in you because of these aspects of what you're doing. Yeah. You have the power to change. You can change what you're doing.
Yeah, it gives them an incentive.
And we will be encouraging them to do so.
Excellent. And so in relation to that, you've now are about to launch, at the time of this interview, you were about to launch the US Climate Exchange, Vegan Climate Exchange Traded Fund, an ETF. Tell us a little bit about that and how that and the index work in tandem.
Yes, well, the index, we started calculating the index in June last year. We'd obviously researched it, and we had back-tested a methodology for putting together that index that achieved the right level of diversification and made it a good proxy, let's say, a good alternative to the standard market index, without adding large, risks or making for some kind of bizarre behavior, let's say, versus the index. What we then tracked over the last year was the behavior of the index, and it behaved as we anticipated it would do, relative to the market, and that gave us the confidence as well, and the feedback that we got, and when we created the index, was very positive from people that they would like to invest, in this way, which was something that we kind of intuitively felt, because this was something of a pain point for ourselves. I mean, I had the same issues in terms of investing my own pension, in terms of finding a fund product that would actually take my thoughts about the animals and the environment seriously. So we embarked upon the process then of launching a fund. We decided to do an exchange traded fund because the ETF market, I'll say ETF, it's easier, is in the US is the largest in the world, and there's a very clear kind of structure around what an ETF is. It's readily available on the stock market. You don't have to go to a specific provider to buy it. Once it's on the stock market, anybody can buy it using their online platforms. But it's designed for it's trading within the US market. So people's accessibility is dependent on their ability from their own countries to access the US stock market and the ETFs, and whether there's any particular guidelines in their own country. But theoretically, it is highly accessible. And the way that the ETF works is that it will basically just mirror the performance of the index, because the portfolio manager who is running the underlying holdings. So a fund is basically a collection of stock holdings. He is going to be buying each individual stock that's within the index in the same proportions. So he's trying to, what we call in financial terms, he's trying to replicate the index. So he will be buying that portfolio. And so the performance of the ETF should be very, very similar, barring trading costs and obviously the management fees, to the index. So there should be very small tracking error between the two. And he is very, very clear on the fact that he cannot go outside the list of stocks that we have, quote unquote, approved. And so, only the stocks that have been screened as acceptable for the index will be allowed into the ETF.
Got it. So you mentioned that it's, at the moment, anyone in the US should easily be able to access it. For Europe, I believe there was some issues, but you're coming out with a particular European product.
Yes. We have the ideas, and we have some discussions in place with different counterparties in Europe in terms of the right product, in terms of launching a product, the right product to launch, both in terms of underlyings, as in which stocks, let's say, whether we continue with the US and just create an analogous product to the US, or whether we look at a different index, maybe a European or a global. So we're exploring that at the moment, trying to figure out what is the best thing to bring to market. Certainly the easiest thing would be to simply create the same thing as the US, and sell it to a European audience. We think that would have some appeal, but we're wondering whether there may be other products which would be more appealing to the European audience, whether they would prefer to have something in Europe first,
sure,
rather than a US product. So so this is something that we are exploring.
And for people like in countries like, say, Australia, for example, and other countries, then basically, as long as they can trade US stocks and shares, there's no reason why they can't access the ETF. And for pension funds, or superannuation as they're called in Australia, people might have to just simply ask their fund to say, look, this product is available, can you buy it, because I want to invest in it. Okay.
Yes. I mean, people hold their assets in different ways. Some people hold their assets directly, and they are directly trading in the market. Depending on the local rules, in some countries you can see the US ETFs and you can purchase them, and in others you can't. And it's it's apart from Europe, which I know the US ETFs were removed because of the new PRIPS regulation which came in last year. I'm not sure what the rules are on other countries, only to say that I'm aware that in most other countries outside the EU, it's certainly possible to see the US ETFs on online trading platforms, but we don't have any kind of active marketing campaign out there because the thing has not been registered for sale to investors in those markets.
Yeah.
What I would say about the pensions providers is, yes, certain people may have plans with a pension provider, and that pension provider may have pre-selected a list of funds that they're willing to offer on their platform. Now, because the US Vegan Climate ETF is a new product, it won't be on those platforms yet. The pension provider may be open to putting it on with obviously having looked at it and having done their own due diligence on it. And we're very, very happy to talk to any pension provider, explain to them about the product in order to, allay any concerns that they might have about what the product would be and how different that might be from any other product that's on their platform. Yeah. We consider it matches up very well to quite a number of products that are out there.
Let's talk about Beyond Impact, which is about your investment. So you've, through your Beyond Impact Advisory Fund, you've invested in some vegan brands. I think off the top of my head, Mink Shoes is one, Live Kindly, and some others. Tell us a little bit about, because I imagine you get pitched a lot. Tell us about what do you look for in a brand before deciding whether or not to invest in them. So how can a vegan brand stand out to you? What do you look for?
Yeah, it's slightly terrifying how much I'm getting contacted these days. And yes, Beyond Impact did start with my own money, but I do have co-investors now who are investing alongside me in the companies in the portfolio, and I'm pretty transparent on the portfolio. I put it up on my website so people want to look and see what I've made investments in, for good or bad. It's up there. Yes. So if people are pitching, I think there are three precepts that are absolutely critical before I will even go any further with a company. And the three S's are superior, scalable, and sustainable.
Superior, scalable, and sustainable. Okay.
Yeah. Now, the superior is that the product must be a superior product. Now, that might sort of go, oh, but how can a vegan product be superior? Well, it has to at least try and attract people to be vegan. It has to encourage people to switch from, the things that they've maybe eaten throughout their entire life to eat this thing, this new product. And I think that, thanks to some food tech and certainly, some development in terms of technology, recipes certainly, and sort of mechanical processes that people are using, flavorings, the products that are coming out now are dramatically better than any vegan product was 10 years ago. I mean, I think everybody would acknowledge that. And so some of the companies that I've invested in are developing these products, already have them out in the market. And there is also massive potential for growth. So some of the things that I've invested in are rather more in the ingredient space or in the technology to create new products. So one company, for example, is a specialist in microalgae. I've got a couple of companies that are doing something called precision fermentation, where yeast is engineered to create proteins, and these proteins are biosimilar to animal proteins, or exactly the same, essentially, as some animal proteins, or could be better. So they could be a molecule that's been designed to actually be an improvement on an animal protein. So they have the potential to be dropped into and used in an analogous way to existing meat, dairy, egg type use cases, or even leather. I mean, one is collagen, and it can actually be sort of spread out onto a surface and could be a leather substitute. and so that's that superiorness of the superiority, let's say, is coming from the process, but also the use cases. The scalability is that it's important from a revenue perspective, and there it comes back to the whole financial background of what could be the growth of this company. But also, it's really important from an animal perspective. So even, let's say, a less sort of food techy process, one of the companies which is on my website, Ocean Hugger Foods, they're making the sushi substitutes from just ordinary vegetables, tomatoes, carrots, aubergines, not something that needs to, some massive switch in farming to produce this thing, or it needs to be created in a vat or whatever. So that's very scalable. And is going out into food distribution in the US and Canada, and hopefully will be in Europe soon. So that scalability is super important for returns and for the animals. And the sustainability, obviously, we don't want to swap one problem for another. So in that situation, I might point to something like the Mighty Society, which is a pea milk manufacturer that I've invested in, a pea milk brand. And they are sourcing their peas from Europe, and the environmental footprint of peas is far lower than things like almonds for a start, and also it doesn't have to be transported long distances. Quite a number of people using almonds in Europe are transporting those almonds actually from California. They don't find that the Southern European almonds have the right flavor, and so you've got all of the water utilization of almonds, plus you've got the transportation costs versus the much lower environmental footprint of peas. And of course, it's dramatically lower. Both are probably dramatically lower than dairy for a start. But so, optimizing the portfolio towards what I would hope to be the most sustainable alternatives within this space as well.
Got it. Fantastic. No, I love that. So I can imagine there's still a lot of brands that might hit all of those three criteria, but you've still got to choose which ones to pick. So, I mean, is there an example that you can give us of perhaps one or two of your most successful investments and why they've been successful? And even if you're willing to share without naming any names, perhaps some that may not have been quite so successful and why that is. Like, I'm just trying to see what the differentiator is between, because obviously I can imagine there's lots of brands that could say, yes, we tick all those boxes. So what's that extra factor? Because it's a risk for you at the end of the day as an investor. Even though these are great ethical and sustainable brands, it's still a risk for you putting your money in these companies and in these businesses. So what is it that you look for that's that extra that you think, this company's going to succeed more than perhaps this company that's maybe doing something similar?
Okay, right. The criteria, aside from those three precepts, are really to go much more into the detail of the company's management, the company's product, the company's strategy, what their market is, their how they're going to address that market, what contacts they have already to get into that market, if they already have experience in that area, rather than just being a sort of let's say enthusiastic amateur. Let's say. In the food tech side of things and the more biotech area, you obviously, you need to have a roster of sort of PhDs or existing sort of researchers in that group, and people that have, proven what they're worth. Maybe they already have patents or have access to a patent portfolio. So it's all of the financial analysis combined with really understanding why their product is superior, how they're going to defend that superiority and monetize it, and get the product out into the market so that the returns are there. So it's quite a high bar. I would say it is pretty high bar. I don't see that it does the animals any good at all for me to invest in a business that fails.
Exactly.
That's just throwing my money, throwing money away to that many people come to me with, as I said, quite a lot of enthusiasm, and they genuinely want to do the right thing, and they think that they've come up with something which is a good idea. But if through my experience, I've seen other people try and fail, and if I look at the person and I can't see what it is about their business plan or their strategy that is going to make it any different from there for them. There's a number of people that have come to me over time with marketplace type concepts, e-commerce type concepts.
Right.
And I know that for e-commerce, you have to spend a fortune on marketing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're just providing a product which people can maybe get directly from the manufacturer, and that is quite readily searchable, and they may be able to find it on somewhere like Amazon, some of the bigger platforms. How are you going to compete? So there are a number of things like that, and just having the ethics isn't enough. I'm afraid you have to have some kind of USP which is really going to bring people to your platform or bring people to your product. And so to an extent, I mean, that's informed the investments, because if you have a tech that's defensible, if you have patents, if you have something that's genuinely something that other people can't do, then that obviously gives you a distinct advantage.
Thanks. How much involvement do you have in a business after you've invested it? Is it a case of you invest financially and then they go off and just do their own thing and maybe check in with you now and then to let you know how they're doing? Or are you involved in it in any other way, like in terms of mentoring them or having any kind of say in the running of their business?
Yeah, it varies. It really depends on the level and the stage of the investment. I would say that the larger investments that I've made within companies which are earlier stage. So I have seeded a few companies where I've been I've been the first investor or second investor, let's say, and generally in those cases I've gone in with quite a larger percentage of the company, and have taken and have a director's position. Now that obviously involves some responsibility, and it involves a much higher degree of contact with the company, certainly in terms of the information transfer from them to me. That has to obviously happen sort of legally, that I have to be kept informed in what's going on in the business. There are certain things that they can't do without my consent, for example. And certainly in terms of helping the company, I have, I and my co-investors have an interest in helping that company succeed. And so, basically my entire sort of network is available for those companies, and has been helpful in respect of follow-on investment into the company when it's been expanding. And that's something that I can offer to the other companies as well. It really depends. The level of involvement really depends on how early a stage the company is and how much they need from me. All of the companies can come to me and discuss anything about their business, and I'll try and help. But with some of them, because of the directorships, obviously I'm much more involved.
Yeah, of course. Oh, wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. That's good to know. Let's talk about Beyond Animal. So as well as doing all this amazing stuff that we've talked about, you've also created or co-created the Beyond Animal platform, and I'll let you explain it, but in how I see it, you can tell me if this is right. It's a digital integrated platform. It's like a combination of a vegan Facebook and LinkedIn, and an e-commerce and a jobs board and information and connection hub for all things related to the vegan lifestyle and animal advocacy. That's kind of my impression of it. But let you tell us about it in your own words, what it is and why you've started it.
Yes, I mean, with that we have quite a sort of grand vision for what that could be, and what you're seeing up there at the moment is definitely a kind of MVP of the of the product. It is a usable and I think quite user friendly system for people to connect to, obviously to to be registered, to create a profile in the same way that they would on other platforms, to put as much as they want about themselves personally, to create a business page. And the rules essentially in terms of people, I mean, anybody can join the platform. We don't have any kind of vegan pledge or anything that, you have to sign, to be vegan, but we do expect people to be, to have a positive attitude, let's say, towards plant-based lifestyle and towards this transition and to the helping the vegan economy grow is the essential aim of the platform. So we do have rules around the kind of, things that you might see on other platforms that are described as trolling, let's say. So it is core. The structure is like a social media platform, but with the business directory, vegan businesses or businesses which have vegan products that they're looking to promote can join, and obviously, if you don't have products but you have a service, but you're a vegan company, your founders are vegan. The idea is, if you're vegan, and I've had this situation in my personal life as well, where maybe I've wanted to engage somebody to do a particular piece of work for me, and if they've come to me and they're touting a fur coat and design a vegan bag, do I really want to engage this person and give them my money when I know what it's going to be spent on? That was something that kind of really struck me from a personal aspect, was that if I had any money to spend, I wanted it to go, towards to go to people that were not, perpetuating the animal exploitation that I was against. So so we have some branding, marketing, website designers, etc. So there's people like that who are also putting up their businesses too. So that business directory, I think, is useful both from the consumer's standpoint, but also from the perspective of other businesses. So if you're a business and you want to sell your product in XYZ country, maybe there's somebody who can help you with the marketing there, etc. So from a B2B perspective, also within the sort of supply chain of food, if you've got ingredients manufacturers, we've got some food labs on there, some co-manufacturers, etc. So we'd like to see everybody who's involved in plant-based or non-animal-based businesses join and connect with each other and be able to actually do business with each other in pursuance of this. And on the job side, we've just created the jobs board. We feel that there is an interest amongst people to also be able to. I know, quote unquote, unlucky, somewhat lucky to the extent that I've been able to stop what I was doing in terms of working for a company and put a certain amount of time aside to create businesses and have a little bit of a runway to do that and to hopefully have them become successful, and then allow me to continue doing that. We obviously, a lot of other people are having, are employees, and they would prefer to work for companies that share their values. And so we feel that there is a demand for the sort of vegan jobs and for people to feel that they're building something in their career, that their career has some purpose. If they're working for example, a company that's creating a meat alternative, they can feel, happy about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's just started up the jobs board. So I definitely encourage companies to post jobs on there. And then aside from that, there's forums for discussion. Our plans for the platform are more expansive than social media, and really focus much more on verification of vegan products. So what we're trying to do there is to increase the level of confidence in vegan products. At the moment, there's a lot of self-certification going on. There's a lot of different providers. We'd like to try and sort of, tie that together in some way. And we have even, further thoughts around traceability and sustainability and having that kind of information available. And then the other side of things is funding. So at the moment, within the Beyond Impact, as I said, precepts of that are the sustainable, the scalable, and the superior. But the scalable is it blocks off quite a lot of companies, because I might really love to have a vegan bakery in the, in the suburb where I live, or coffee shop or whatever, where I could go and have a nice range of vegan cakes and a coffee with almond milk or whatever. And sorry, no, pea milk, must be pea milk. But I'm not going to invest in that, not within that structure, because that's not what the mandate is, and that's not really the mandate of any venture capital, which is where I'm kind of positioning the thing in terms of the growth potential. But those types of companies still deserve to exist, and they can be profitable businesses. They generate cash, and they serve their local communities. And so there are a lot of types of companies like that, and taking equity positions probably doesn't make sense. If you're not going to get the growth equity, is having a holding in the company, and if you don't see that the company is necessarily going to grow dramatically, it doesn't make so much sense. But other forms of financing are important for those companies to get them off the ground and to finance, for example, just their working capital. So we are working on something in that area to enable more types of vegan companies to get access to capital. It shouldn't just be dominated by the big boys, or it shouldn't just be about the latest sort of meat alternative that suddenly explodes around the globe. That's great. But, a lot of people would like to run their own vegan business, but they don't necessarily have those ambitions, but still have some capital needs, and can provide a source of return, but more of a sort of a, interest-like, source of return rather than equity.
Got it. I love that. That's fantastic. So, and obviously at the moment, as you say, it's fairly new. What's been the uptake so far? Is there anything you can share on sort of how it's being received by the vegan and the animal rights community?
Yeah, well, we're in the thousands in terms of numbers of people, and in the hundreds in terms of businesses. I think that the growth is going to come. Potentially there will be some kind of knock-on growth from what I'm doing in the investing side, with the brand becoming better known from that, because I'm using the same branding across all of the different platforms, and it is a name that I've been using for several years as well. Clearly, I'm conscious that there's another company out there with the name Beyond, but it is but actually there's
I was going to ask you about that, actually. Yeah,
actually there's a few in the vegan space. I mean, there's the burger company has become extremely successful, and is going on from strength to strength, which is absolutely fabulous. And they that company, and in terms of the portfolios, you can imagine the listed equity portfolios that we're running. We'll have that we'll have that company within the portfolio. So we'd like to see more of those companies, obviously. They're by no means the only one that's using that brand, actually, though, or that name in terms of the naming. There's a sushi bar in Manhattan, which has been going for several years. A vegan shoe company in the UK that's been going for some years. That's using that brand as well, that name as well. So it's maybe we just all had a similar kind of idea, that it was sort of a good way of envisioning a different kind of future, where all of these types of products, and services could be made vegan, could be provided to consumers and to investors without animal exploitation. And so that's really the key thing. And if that becomes a kind of shorthand for a vegan and sustainable company, I mean that's really what we're driving out with the naming that we having chosen that name some years ago, and because I see a bigger vision, I have many other domains available to me to create other businesses within this area, or to work with other people that would like to work with us.
Cool. What's next? What's kind of in the long term for you and your brand?
In terms of the businesses, we have, growth plans for the businesses, for, the investment side, to expand across, different geographies, different types of products, to work with other providers to create the ability for people to have, fully ethical pensions and insurance, etc. Around the philosophy that we've developed. Obviously, to continue to put money into companies, and as the companies are growing, my plan with the Beyond Impact is to be running larger pools of money in order to help that growth. As the company grows, the amount of money that they need grows. And,
yeah, of course.
And so there's a need for further investment there, and with an existing portfolio that is already doing pretty well. Hopefully, people will consider adopting the same approach. The Beyond Animal definitely will expand and can expand. One of the things about the tech business is obviously that it can be pretty infinitely expandable, to the extent that anybody has a phone and wants to register and start being active on the platform, sharing information, activists, collaborating together, people within food science collaborating. We're setting up different groups, investor collaboration, so, there's so much that people can do all within this theme. So it's mission driven. And that's very important. With the Beyond Cruelty, I would like to that has a in its statutes, it has animal advocacy, its own campaigns, also supporting other people's campaigns. So, we'd like to see charities come onto Beyond Animal platform, for example, and also, we will make calls, obviously, for proposals that people might want to finance, as well as our own campaigns. I would really like the whole sort of vegan theme and the cause of veganism to be so much more kind of aspirational in a way than it's been perceived.
Yeah.
Throughout my entire life, it's always been perceived as, but I couldn't give up that. Oh, yes. How do you do that? Yeah. And with all of the new products, there's a kind of, you don't have to anymore. If it really means that much to you, you don't have to anymore. Yeah. Yeah. And you can feel so much healthier as a result, and the environment can be so much cleaner as a result. And you don't, even if you don't realize it, I think people have it on their conscience. Even if they try and deny it, maybe they still have it on their conscience. And I think you feel better about the way you're living as well, that you can feel more comfortable in yourselves. You don't have to kind of like justify or try and rationalize, we've always used animals, that's what they're here for, all of these sort of things. It's kind of like, wouldn't you feel a whole lot better if you didn't have to sort of create those kind of reasons, or half of the time when I hear people justifying not being vegan, I'm kind of like, are you trying to persuade me, or are you trying to persuade yourself?
That's a good point.
I'm really not sure when I hear all the, when they come out with all these arguments. It's like, I think my existence is a kind of an affront to some people. That there's kind of living proof of, and I'm not by far, I'm not the only one. There's a number of people, even people who've been vegan their entire lives, so I think it's something very, very positive. So that's what the foundation is about. Is really about going beyond cruelty and into a whole different kind of world where people can be kinder and more compassionate to each other.
Wonderful. I love that. As I say, I think it's amazing that the face of veganism is changing as well. It's like, because we come in all shapes and sizes, ages, looks, etc., and now industries. Because I think it's great. There's people like yourself, Lee Coates, who's a mutual friend of ours, who calls himself Mr. Establishment, because and Philip Wallen and all these others, Sebastiano, in Switzerland, and people are kind of like, they can't dismiss vegans as just being kind of
weird hippie types. Nothing wrong with hippies or anything, but I think it's really great that this is really kind of just coming together so much, and it's amazing what you're doing. You've shared a heck of a lot of inspiration and information here, which has been really great. So thank you so much for speaking with me, Claire.
Oh, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate that.
So that was Claire Smith from Beyond Investing. You can find out more at beyondinvesting.com. And that link is on the show notes page at veganbusinessmedia.com/podcasts and going to episode 129. Now for some vegan business news highlights. A vegan food hall has opened in Miami, reports the Miami Herald. In what it claims is a world first, V-Shops features 8 concepts, including the Original Choices, which serves burritos, bowls and breakfast, Next Generation Pizza, Southern Soul Garden Barbecue, Tank Burger Bar, Morning Glory Organic Coffee, My Brother's Bakery, Neo's Blender, which sells smoothies, and Ice Dream Parlour. Husband and wife team Alex Suevas and Laurie Zito own all the concepts at V-Shops, and its Director of Operations, Rose Flynn, is a vegan of 40 years. Flynn says that deciding on the recipes is the most challenging part of putting together a vegan food hall. So to make sure that the meat substitutes were up to scratch, V-Shops got meat eaters to work on the recipes, since the majority of customers are not vegan. So again, we're seeing more and more people who are not yet vegan happy to frequent vegan eateries. And it says a lot that an all-vegan food hall is attracting mostly non-vegans, or pre-vegans as I like to call them. Let's hope we see more vegan food halls across the globe, because of course we want these to be the default, so that all food halls ditch animal products and replace them with plant-based alternatives. A refillable vegan deodorant brand has made its debut in Target stores, reports Veg News. Miro, which launched last year as a subscription service, says its products use 50% less plastic than traditional deodorants. The deodorant is available in Target in both the men's and women's aisles and comes in colourful packaging in 5 coloured container and scent combinations. Scent pod refills can be purchased separately and mixed and matched with the coloured containers. Miro founder and CEO Greg Leptevsky said having their products available in Target gives the brand the ability to scale its mission to do positive things for people and planet. So this is a good example of a relatively new brand being able to quickly add an extra business model from subscription to large-scale retail. And it's good to see large retailers such as Target continuing to be open to stocking both vegan and sustainable products. Fantastic. So that's it for this episode of Vegan Business Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a review and rating on iTunes or any other platform you're listening on. Finally, I encourage you to head over to veganbusinessmedia.com, where you can find more free resources as well as details of how we can work together to help you grow your vegan business. I'm Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. And I look forward to catching up with you in the next episode of Vegan Business Talk. Bye for now.